Coming up on show 442, Elon Musk's Twitter rampage. What is it with GM and Rivian and a possible investment? We'll tell you more. And the Pininfarina Battista. Well, those stories and many, many more coming up on today's podcast. My name is Martyn Lee. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you're listening in the world. Welcome to the show. We call this EV News Daily, your weekend edition, Saturday 13th of April. I've been through every EV story that I can find today and picked out the ones to save you time, by the way. Thank you as always to myev.com for helping make this show. I've even been over to see their offices in the US to understand what they're doing, to see what they're doing, building the world's first marketplace, all about electric cars, buying and selling and learning about them along the way as well. And if this is the year that you go for it, that you buy an EV, if this is the year that maybe you'll be selling your EV, then you know what to do, myev.com. Is that right? I did that pretty quickly and I didn't engage my brain. EV. Yeah, no, I did. I was kind of on autopilot there. My brain just thought, what have I just spelled out? No, I think it was myev.com. Let's kick off with some Elon Musk tweets. Now, Elon has been pretty prolific on Twitter over the last 48 hours, and he had plenty to celebrate. SpaceX and Falcon Heavy. Not only a successful launch of the satellite, but also a triple landing for the very first time. The two Falcon 9 boosters, which fall away from the side, they land themselves, if you haven't seen this, and I'm sure you have by now, but if you haven't seen this, holy moly, it's just mind-blowing. So normally, I bring you up to speed if you didn't know, normally with rocket launches, you send a rocket into space and then it's disposed of and hundreds of millions of dollars later, they start again. Elon's plan with SpaceX is reusable rockets. And so this is Falcon Heavy. This is a huge rocket going into space, big payload, big satellite at the top of it. And there's three parts of it. There's like the main central booster and there's two boosters to the side. Those boosters, when they're done with, detach when it's in space, then they fall back to Earth and they land themselves. And then the main part of Falcon Heavy, that landed itself as well on a drone ship out to sea. And even the fairing at the very top of the rocket, the fairing that comes away because inside is the satellite, even those bits have been recovered and will be reused in a future mission. It's just incredible. Anyways, he was, you know, had plenty to celebrate, but he was also tweeting about cars as well. We'll kick off with a series of tweets by Elon Musk, and because I'm being selfish, we'll talk about right-hand drive, because it affects the UK, and actually affects any market where you're listening, where you still can't buy a Tesla Model 3 in right-hand drive. So somebody on Twitter asked him about right-hand drive, and he said the configurator will be open in the UK next few weeks. There's your quote, next few weeks. And then May or June, you will be able to, they'll start deliveries. That's exciting for us. We've waited a long time, by the way. We'll come on to this in a bit, actually. There's another bit to do with how when you have to wait so long, you are slightly disadvantaged. I'm going to come on to that at the end, when we get to that story as well, because prices are changing. Oh my goodness, we're going to talk about full self-driving prices. I know, it's a controversial subject, but when we get to that, then you'll understand what I'm saying about it's a little unfair for those that have to wait. He also talked about the life cycle or the life expectancy of the Model 3, and Elon said Model 3 drive unit and body is designed like a commercial truck for a 1,000,000-mile life. Current battery modules should last 300,000 to 500,000 miles, 1,500 cycles. Replacing the modules, not the pack, will cost $5,000 to $7,000, and then if you unpack that, there's 4 modules, by the way, and there's lots of modules in the S and the X, but in the Model 3 there's 4 modules, and so if you can just replace one of those, maybe if it's worn or if it's faulty, between $5,000 and $7,000, then he says 1,000,000 miles. This is not an outrageous claim, but just press pause on that for a second and realise what he's saying. 1,000,000 miles. Right, if you do 2, 3, 4, 500,000 miles in a car, that is headline news. In fact, it's our question of the week this week. We'll get to your answers tomorrow. Double that, and 1,000,000-mile EV. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that it's a nice round number to tweet. But what it means is pretty significant. So we'll see. They're still a young car company when you think about it. They're still a new company, and they don't have that much data. They have some data, but in terms of how many of their cars have done 1,000,000 miles, Well, there you go. Journalist Tom Randall said the Tesla shares fell after the Nikkei reported that Panasonic is freezing spending on its gigafactory expansion. Panasonic said it reached 35 gigawatt hours a year of capacity in March, enough to build 500,000 Model 3s and Powerwalls a year. Elon saw that tweet and replied to it with this: incorrect. The Panasonic cell lines at Giga are only at 24 gigawatt hours per year and have been a constraint on Model 3 output since July. No choice but to use other suppliers for Powerwall and Powerpack cells. Tesla won't spend money on more capacity until existing lines get closer to that 35 gigawatt hours per year theoretical. So, Elon Musk seeing a tweet from a journalist and correcting him there. Also, I didn't realise that in Powerwall and Powerpack they were using anything but Panasonic cells. By the sounds of it, they've had to go to the market there and get some more. As for full self-driving, always controversial, Elon Musk said this: please note that the price of the full self-driving option will increase substantially over time, starting May the 1st. And that's what I come to about here in the UK, right-hand drive. We still can't get the Model 3. And wouldn't it be great if they can just get maybe the first 2 weeks, that'd be all the reservation holders that have been waiting for 3 years, let them have an option of buying full self-driving at the current price. If it goes up from May the 1st, you are really sticking two fingers up at anyone in the UK who's a Tesla fan, who's been waiting for years, still waiting, and just give them the chance to buy full self-driving at the current price. Because by the look at the way the timing is working out, full self-driving price increase May 1st, then right-hand drive configurator opens. Is it fair? Well, life's not fair. I get that, but it would be nice. But we'll wait and see. If I know one thing between now and May the 1st. Everything will probably change. On the subject of full self-driving, one of my Patreon supporters, Cesar Trujillo, said to me, with all the Tesla news, I wondered if full self-driving autopilot would come down again in price. I looked on my car and on my Tesla account, there's nowhere to upgrade anymore. I should have done it when it was cheap. I only bought the enhanced autopilot rather than full self-driving during the last fire sale. So if you have any insight on that, please help out Cesar. Elon Musk also appeared. I'll tell you what, he's been busy. He also appeared on a podcast about artificial intelligence. And he said this: buying a car today is an investment in the future. I think the most profound thing is that if you buy a Tesla today, I believe you are buying an appreciating asset, not a depreciating asset. The cars currently being produced, with the hardware currently being produced, are capable of full self-driving. End quote. So what he's referring to there is the ability for your car to work for its supper, so that when you're not driving your Model 3, it goes out and is full self-driving and is part of a fleet of driverless taxis. The stuff of science fiction. How far are we away from that? Some say a long time. Others are more optimistic. But either way, I think, again, a naughty turn of phrase that the car is an appreciating asset. No, a classic Ferrari is an appreciating asset when you buy it at an auction for 20 million and sell it a couple of years later for 25 because classic cars are going up in value. There are EVs that are going up in value, but that's because of scarcity. The car that I bought last year is now worth more money, but that's because of scarcity. I don't know if when you're making 500,000 cars a year, you can count on scarcity increasing the value of your car. So rather than saying it's an appreciating asset, because surely the asset depreciates. If you own a car, it will go down in value, but it could make you money. So maybe it would make more money than it depreciates in value. Does that make it an appreciating asset? Oh, maybe in Elon's mind. I don't know. I don't want to overthink this, but anyway. Right, that's enough. That's enough of Elon's tweet storm. Let's move on to GM, a proposed tie-up between the largest US-based automaker and the fledgling company Rivian, trying to make electric pickup trucks. It may well be doomed based on a new report by Bloomberg. The publication reported yesterday that General Motors and Rivian have ended their discussions that would have had the Detroit-based auto giant give the startup a healthy cash infusion to bring its products to market, says Zach from InsideEVs.com. The deal would have placed GM alongside Amazon as a major investor in the startup manufacturer, as the tech giant announced a strategic investment with Rivian in February that was part of a $700 million equity round. Well, GM's role was reportedly to help Rivian with manufacturing and parts purchasing, while GM have received the engineering it needed to make an electric pickup truck before Ford and Fiat Chrysler would be able to do theirs. However, it looks like that's two-way deal, maybe fallen apart, maybe it was never a deal in the first place. Trucks are essential, by the way, to those or all of those people we've named in this story, whether it's Rivian making only electric trucks, or Ford, or FCA, or GM. Trucks are the money spinner. So you've got to electrify them. You've got to get it right as well. They will. All the trucks will be electric. I'd like to see some great examples of that as well as Rivian. But it looks like they'll have to make do with all of Amazon's money, which is not exactly a hardship when you think about how much money Amazon have got. Okay, let's talk about leasing a Model 3. Tesla has officially launched its Model 3 leasing program to include any variant of the EV, says Teslarati. Unlike traditional agreements, the Model 3 vehicles, if you lease one, it won't be available for purchase once the lease matures. You see, Tesla intends to use those vehicles when they come off the lease 2, 3, 4 years, I guess. There are three options, aren't there? I have gone through the lease configurator in my spare time. It's what I do for fun, you see, on the US, with my VPN connected on the US Tesla site. And I think there were three. I think what they were. I think like the longest one was maybe 37 months or something. Anyway, when they come off that lease agreement, Tesla want the cars back because they want to use them for the Tesla network, the autonomous ride-hailing network. The decision to maintain ownership of the Model 3 fleet for future use indicates Tesla's high level of confidence in the development of its full self-driving program. Now, any revenue lost from not offering used cars for purchase, they're clearly expecting to make more money back by keeping the cars themselves and using them as part of their self-driving fleet. I'll put a link to Teslarati in the show notes. What about cheaper versions of the Model 3 in Europe and China? Well, now they've opened up orders for them. Along with changes to its vehicle lineup earlier this week, Tesla has also opened orders for the cheaper version of the Model 3 in European markets and China. We knew this was coming. This is their MO. They always release their most expensive cars first with the higher margins, then they always release the cheaper ones. And so it goes with Europe and China, says Fred at Electrek, after removing the mid-range and long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3 from the configurator, which is my personal favourite, was the long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3. It came, then it went, then it came back as a surprise to everybody. Like, where did that come from? They brought it back. And then just a few short weeks later, they killed it again, which is a shame. That'd be the car that I would order, by the way. The rear-wheel drive. I don't need all-wheel drive. Not here in the UK. We get a few weeks of bad weather, but not enough to need all-wheel drive or performance. For me, it's range. I would just want that because that was the longest range Model 3 they did. But no longer in the configurator. The mid-range has gone as well. I'm not surprised about the mid-range going. That was only ever, it seemed to me, a temporary measure. And so it's kind of finally bit the bullet on that one. Tesla is now offering, so if you go onto the configurator, it's far more simple now. Standard range plus, long range all-wheel drive, and long range performance. Tesla says the other versions can be ordered off the menu, and what that means, you have to go into a store and ask for them specifically. That would be the stores that a couple of weeks ago they were all closing down then. Not been the best time for comms, has it? I'm sure that I'm not the only person. I'm sure there's plenty of people inside the company going, you tell Elon. No, you tell Elon. No, you tell Elon. They've got to get that fixed. It's been a mess this year, the communications. And I'm not a Tesla investor, by the way. I don't play the stock market. I don't invest in single stocks. But I guess if you are involved in that side of it, it must be frustrating to see it wildly swing upwards and then wildly swing downwards. And it's largely due to those kind of things where, like, we're closing all the stores and then, hang on, we've thought about it. We're not closing them all after all. And it's like, oh, come on. Anyway, let's talk about Autocar driving the new Euro specification of the Kia Soul. The Kia Soul, or the e-Soul, as they, be careful how you say that, the e-Soul. This podcast is clean, by the way. The e-Soul, at least here in Europe, that's what they're calling it. Maybe in the US, they're calling it the Kia Soul EV. The Autocar Review recently shared their first drive thoughts of the new Soul EV. However, the drive that took place was indeed in South Korea. The publication has access to a Euro spec model and provides some more insight, says InsideEVs.com. The gas-powered Soul, very popular in the US because of its low price and versatility. However, Autocar points out that it's not nearly as sought after here in Europe, and I would concur on that. I would back that up. Kia is moving to change that by offering the all-new electric e-Soul, I said e-Soul, in a 64 kilowatt-hour battery pack configuration. Oh man, we talk about range. That's great, isn't it? Range. Lovely. In addition, the new gas-powered Soul is going to be sold in the US. It's so popular in the US. However, in Europe, we will not be able to buy the new version of the combustion version of the Soul here in Europe. There's so much appetite for the EV version, it's the only one they're going to sell. Autocar says that while Kia's e-Niro may be more practical because of its greater cargo capacity, the Soul actually has an edge when it comes to interior and performance, about that the same as the Niro EV. Let's talk about Top Gear having a look at the Battista. Automobili Pininfarina! Battista is, I believe, how you say the full name of the car manufacturer and the model. Top Gear had a look at it. The Geneva Motor Show last month was the reveal of the most powerful road car ever to come from Italy. Not a Ferrari, not a Lamborghini. It was actually Automobili Pininfarina, which is now an automaker, but not just the design studio as it used to be. They say the Battista is the world's first pure electric, luxury, hyper GT specific segment of the market. And the car deserves every single word from this colourful description. In the new video that Top Gear made, it says Motor1.com today, the most interesting part of the video shines light on the construction of the Battista, starting with information about the battery, 120 kilowatt hours, same as you'll find in the Rimac Concept C_2. Rory Reid talks about the 4 electric motors that propel the car. One important thing we learned is that most of the car's driving modes limit the torque you have available. It's a car that would quite happily put you into the nearest hedge if you were given the full power, the full beans, without actually getting used to how much power is under your right foot. I'll throw a link to Motor1.com in the show notes below if you want to have a look. A couple more stories, and actually, let's come back to a couple of cars, South Korean cars, that I think don't get enough airtime on this podcast. Let's talk about the Kia e-Niro, a spectacular car, says Car and Driver. They say that Kia isn't helping its sales prospects by limiting the Niro EV to only 12 states in the US, California and 7 of the other Z or ZEV states, neither Vermont nor Maine, Georgia, Texas, Washington and Hawaii. Although Niro EVs are being produced in South Korea, en route to the US on the dealer lots, the pricing, as you can imagine, with scarcity, it's not exactly going to be cheap. A safe bet is that they will arrive at the same $37,500 as the Kona Electric, maybe even a little more actually. Here in Europe, we've seen the e-Niro just a tad more expensive than its kind of sister/cousin car, the Kona. Hyundai and Kia have sold so few electrified vehicles, they're still getting the maximum $7,500 federal tax credit for years to come, a perk which Teslas and Chevys no longer qualify for. And finally, have I got time? Yes, 18 minutes. Let's try and get through this. Kia is experiencing a success story with its lineup of electric vehicles here in Europe. It's now presented it with a problem because it can't satisfy demand. It's why it's reportedly looking into building its electrified cars here in Europe, not just South Korea, says InsideEVs.com today. While the Niro, the Optima and the Soul hybrids and electrics are all made in South Korea for global consumption, Kia may actually make their cars in Europe, Slovakia, to supply European markets, according to Automotive News Europe. Kia Europe Chief Operating Officer Emilio Herrera told them that the company would need to sell about 32,000 EVs every single year from the end of next year onwards, and that's to comply with EU emissions regulations. Kia is being pressured by the EU. All car makers, by the way, all automakers are under pressure by the European Union to cut their average emissions of all the cars they sell, CO2 emissions, to 94 grams per kilometre by 2021. Something that those car companies can only do by selling more EVs, or, as we saw with Fiat Chrysler, joining up with Tesla, forming a pool with another automaker, an automaker that doesn't have that problem, like an all-electric one, like Fiat paying hundreds of millions to Tesla, because they just haven't got any EVs of their own and are facing billions in fines if they don't meet these new CO2 emissions regulations. Right, very quickly, time for your question of the week. Thanks to myev.com, who set this question of the week. And when they set the question last week, I don't think they realised how timely it would be, with Elon talking about Model 3s that are designed to do 1 million miles. Would you buy a very high mileage EV? Because I was asking, I saw one that done 250,000 miles, a Model S, 4-5 years old, and I was curious. Like, it was not cheap, but it was the cheapest one on the market in the UK at the moment. Bought at auction for 29, I think, and they've got it they put it on the market for like 37, 38, and have had to reduce it. If it's still for sale, last time I looked, it was on for about 32, 33. If you fancy it, by the way, I kind of fancy it. Not that I've got £30,000, but you know, there's a deal to be done there, because they bought that at auction not long ago, because I know somebody who missed out on that car. And would you buy a car that's done 250,000 miles, let alone one that's done 500,000 miles? That's only halfway into what Elon says the car will do. Please email me with your thoughts before tomorrow's show, hello@evnewsdaily.com. And if you want to do that on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter comments if you want to, I would love to hear from you. Right, time for the endy bit. Thank you to 210 patrons of the podcast. It's how we make this show. I don't have any help doing this. I wish I did. It's how I make the show. Thank you very much. Patreon.com/evnewsdaily. patreon.com/evnewsdaily. I used to say, I haven't said this in a long time, like $5 a month, like a posh coffee, like $10 a month, like a super posh coffee. And if that was the kind of thing that you would, in your head, draw a line from that to this and say, well, okay, well, like, I don't mind stopping and pulling into Starbucks and getting a coffee, and actually $5, $10 to help make this podcast. Well, that would be obviously amazing, but I will make the show whatever, so no pressure. You can listen to 441 previous episodes of the show online for free, wherever you get podcasts from. I'm just about on every platform out there, and if there's one that I'm missing, please let me know. And you can hit subscribe, so you get all the new shows first and free and automatically. And that is, I think, how most people use podcasts. They just hit that subscribe button. If you want to hit subscribe, then it just arrives normally within an hour or two of me publishing, updating my RSS feed. I won't get geeky. Right, if you have time to leave a review, I know I always ask, but it's so important, by the way. Whether it's like 1 star or 5 stars, I think they call it, right, I was reading this article, I think they call it social proof. Like when you go to say, oh, there's a podcast here, should I listen to it? And you see a review from one of the listeners. If a show doesn't have many reviews, apparently people think, I won't listen to it. But it has lots of reviews, whether they're good or bad. So the theory goes, people will listen to it. So if you can add your voice to the reviews, that'd be amazing. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.